Hey everyone, welcome to Innovation Unplugged, a podcast where we uncover stories behind the game-changing technologies and the leaders that drive them forward. My name is Jim Brismitsis, and today we're taking to the skies, figuratively and literally, with Elsight, a company redefining how connectivity solutions for unmanned systems and beyond plays out. Known for their innovative communications technologies, Elsight ensures mission-critical real-time connectivity for drones, robotics, autonomous vehicles, and the like. If you're curious about how secure and seamless connectivity is enabling the future of unmanned operations, well, let's get unplugged. Welcome, Yoav. It's a pleasure to have you here, my friend, and thank you for spending time with us today.
Hey Jim, thank you for having me. Always great to speak with you.
Thanks, my friend. Well, we always start each of these podcasts with just a what is Elsight? What was the problem you're all trying to solve for? And what have you done since launching the company and its product quite successfully?
So I think looking on startups in generally, you have kind of a process that you started with solving one problem and that's evolving over time. And Elsight has started with trying to solve video backhauling issues for different purposes. That's how we started. And then over time, it started to evolve, like I said. And what we figured out that we kind of developed a very robust communication system, which is not only for video backhauling, but for any purpose, critical mission purpose type of communication. And we started to look for what will be the best market. And it didn't start with unmanned. We're coming from communication background. That's our background, mainly wireless communication and even more specific cellular communication. And then over time it's evolved and we figured out, and we can get to it on the call on this podcast today, but we figured out that in the uncrewed industry, that's where we have the best value proposition. We have the best opportunity to become the industry standard. So we started to go towards this direction, and this is where we at ever since. It's now 4 years that we are deep into this industry.
Right, and that was I love this story, my friend, because as you rightly point out, startups start usually with a single purpose, and then eventually through market validation and signals and such will evolve to where they are today. And what evolved from some of that was Halo, right? Your platform for connectivity. And what was really interesting when we got the chance to work with you a few batches ago was that you're solving a very critical problem, which is seamless, secure connectivity across disparate networks, right? So rather than having one single service provider that, despite their best efforts and quality of network, there will be some connectivity challenges. What you all develop with Halo is the ability to maintain consistent, seamless connectivity to whatever that device is that Halo is connected into to ensure, safe operation, unmanned operations as well. Did I say that correctly?
Yeah, perfectly. Basically, we figured out, like I said, when we're looking on critical missions and everything related to uncrewed platforms that can be drones, that can be ground vehicles, maritime vehicles, and so on. Communication, it's a very important, it's a critical element of those systems to be operated. Doesn't matter if they're remote controlled or they're completely autonomous, you still want to be able, or the control centers or the operators wants to have the ability to control, to monitor, to upgrade, to do whatever they need. So communication, it's critical, it's a must-have things there, and that's what we're solving, basically, making sure that those platforms will be connected, both from safety purposes and operational purposes, so the mission continuity, basically, or to mission completion. That's our statement. We help the operators and those who try to achieve missions, whatever the mission is, to complete their mission.
Nice. Now, I think it was two winter socials ago, we had the privilege of having one of the initial Halos that were 5G ready in hand, and we showed that off to much interest. But Halo is a physical platform. It's essentially a quad. I think we had the dual SIM, but you essentially had quad SIM boards that enable that whatever device is the unmanned device to be able to connect into four different networks and roam on those networks seamlessly. So the device just has persistent connectivity. They don't see any blips in handover. Is that correct?
Yeah, so basically what the Halo does is we're creating an abstract layer on top of us, the physical layer. And physical layer can be LTE, can be 5G, can be SDR, can be satellite link, can be any type of IP-based communication or serial communication. And what we're doing, we're creating kind of, like I said, an abstract layer on top of those physical layers to get the best quality of service by managing all those different links that we have connected to us, that the product or the hardware can fit into the palm of the hand. So it's very small. It's extremely what we call in the industry swap efficient, size, weight, power consumption efficiency. And by that, what we're basically doing, like I said, we're optimizing whatever available infrastructure that we have. So on the simple case, we can have AT&T, T-Mobile, Verizon, US Cellular, FirstNet, you name it, any type of cellular infrastructure, and we are aggregating all of those into one big reliable pipeline of data. So you can push more bandwidth than what you can do with a single network. It's more redundant and more secure. On the other, or in the same hand, to broaden it even further, it's not only for those networks, terrestrial networks, it's also work in satellite environment. It works on SDR, point-to-point type of environment. So it's kind of an approach saying there is no single infrastructure that is good enough to provide the connection confidence that's required for those systems. So we just utilize whatever is available around the unit, and that's the core of what we do, how to do this kind of quality of service optimization.
Right. And it's on the surface, it sounds like it's easy to do, but I know it's an extremely challenging problem to go solve because every network operates differently. When you cross over from cellular to satellite, there's differences there. And to the app, they're just, whatever the service is using it, they just need to know there's reliable connectivity. So hats off to you all for developing your capabilities. I always like to dive into a customer example of where Elsight or Halo is being deployed today. You don't necessarily need to talk about names. If you want to, you're welcome to. But I'd love to just give our audience a sense of where Halo is deployed today, what the customer situation use case is.
So thinking about use cases in general in the uncrewed, and again, or be more specific in drones, that's all over the place. We're living in a physical world at the end of the day, even though we're doing a lot in the virtual world, but we're living in a physical world, and everything happening around us have some level of drone application. So we have customers doing in the agriculture, we have inspection, we have last middle mile logistics, public and private safety, defense, and those type. We hear it all over the news in some areas of the world. So we have a good exposure to each one of those use cases or those market segments, and I think many of them are interesting. Many people don't know who today you can get your deliveries, even if you need your deliveries from retail to groceries type of deliveries, you can get it over a drone. If you're in the right service areas, you just go into the mobile app. Let's take Walmart as an example. They have a big program around it. So you go into their mobile app and they're committed to get it to you within 20 minutes. It costs like $3.99 or something like that. And that's part of, speaking of customers, so that's something that we are privileged to have drawn up with. Is one of the service providers for Walmart with all their drones using our systems, again, for the safety and to make sure that those missions will be reliable and safe and nothing will fall off the sky. So that's one interesting example of
Kind of
what
important.
people are doing with it. Oh yeah, 100%. It's all about safety.
Yeah. Or if you look across the spectrum of industries, I would think mining, you mentioned agriculture, perhaps others, but what do you see, defense, what do you see are the leading industries for where Elsight is just doing really well?
So I will talk both on the macro level and on the Elsight level. On the macro level, today, like I said before, we hear it all over the news. Drones are all over the place. In every conflict area, you hear about drones in different forms, in different doing different missions, and so on. So that's today big. But for us, seeing the trends that happening in the industry and the progress happening with regulatory frameworks in the States and elsewhere, also in same Europe and Australia and the rest of the world, you see the progress that's happening. So it's clear to us that the commercial use case will become much larger than defense, but it will probably take another 18 to 24 months until this equilibrium will change more towards the commercial world. Today, we see the big numbers coming from Homeland Security and defense. Let's put those two in the same bucket. Going into the commercial, so there are those that are obvious, like let's take inspection, for example, like power line inspection, okay? That what are the alternatives? You can get a full-size helicopter that will cost you thousands of dollars per hours of flight, or you can have a drone that will cost you thousands of dollars for the entire drone, and you can do endless time of inspection. So the unit economics is already there even before the scale and even without all the waivers or all the frameworks, regulatory frameworks and everything in place. On the other hand, if we're talking about last middle mile logistics, which will also become probably the biggest numbers, mainly because it's an unutilized dimension. So we can think we're living on a two dimension basically, and we have a dimension which is almost completely unutilized until a certain altitude when you start to have commercial aviation and so on. But there is a gap there that is currently not in use. There is still a lot of, again, regulatory frameworks that needs to be in place and having the traffic rules, let's call it, for the skies. But once that will get in, this will become a very interesting use case that will change the way we get our groceries, like I said before, or deliveries, or even the US Post Office can, drop you a mail and they don't need to have the delivery man walking to your door foot. So that's what we're seeing. Those are the trends that we're seeing. Some of them will take a little longer. The other are making sense even without the scale in terms of unit economics and how economical is it. So that's in a very high level what we're seeing from our seat.
Okay, let me ask you a tactical question, my friend, and I'll give you a little bit of context. Here in this area, we have the city of Redmond, Bellevue, Kirkland, where I live, and others. But in the city of Redmond, they're currently piloting the use of drones to do inspections of incidences, right? So let's say there's a traffic accident or something. Rather than sending a police person out to the site, they'll just fly a drone. It takes them minutes to get to whatever the location is. They can have eyes on the scene itself, again, whether it's a car accident or what have you. And then that allows the police to then respond to situations that are, truly urgent, and provide intel to them as they're en route and so on and so forth. So if I'm the city of Redmond and I have purchased a number of these drones, is Elsight's module plug and play? How would they adopt and use your capability? That's my tactical question. How would they adopt and use Elsight in situations like that?
So there are a few ways. First of all, this case, it's called DFR, or drone as a first responder. So instead,
Yes.
exactly like you said, instead of sending a police vehicle, they send a drone first. Will get there much quicker, and then they can know momentarily what's happening in the scene and so on.
Right.
The way they can enjoy our technology, or they can, and the reason, or the fact that they're enjoying our technology is that basically can get there, like I said, safer, more reliably, and quicker, I guess, is that either get drones that are coming built in with our technology built in. So you just buy the drone, you don't even know that Elsight is there, you just enjoy the capabilities of the drone.
Awesome.
And we have
Awesome.
today hundreds of OEMs that are already integrate our solution into their drones. So that's come as a OEM, let's call it, or built in. Or on the other hand, if they have off-the-shelf drones, like take DJI, which is currently red listed in the US, so it's phasing out in a way from DFR or government application, but still we have a plug and play, exactly plug and play product for that you can just if you don't have any knowledge before, you just plug it into the drone with one cable and you can start to operate it for long distances. And again, having it as an aftermarket kit, not related at all to DJI, kind of overcome the communication of the DJI, so you're not dependent on that. If you have a fear of backdoor and data leakage and so on, we are protecting the data. Whatever comes to our end, we can make sure that this is going only to this direction and not going to any other place. So that's something that we're offering through our partners or directly, whether it's police forces or companies who are providing services to police department. We are working with all of those as an aftermarket, or like I said, an OEM that comes built in.
Got it. Thank you. I've had a few customers ask about Elsight in the past, and they were sort of under this impression that they weren't able to use your modules with some of the existing drones. Now that this was really meant to clear that air, and I didn't understand. I didn't realize that you already are embedded through OEM agreements in existing with existing drone providers. So that's awesome. Can a customer go to Elsight's website and see what OEMs are supportive of Elsight, or where could they get that list?
Yeah, we do have a list on the website. You can see the different
Awesome.
logos of the different companies, and obviously approach us directly once we will understand what is the use case. Again, whether it's mining use case or police force that wants to give security or a private security, or whatever is the use case, just approach us. We can recommend what will be the best platform for your needs. Depends on the depends on the environment you're flying in and what is the mission you want to complete, and you'll get it directly from the manufacturer with our product already built in. So if any of our listeners have a specific use case that couldn't find the best way to go BVLOS, beyond visual line of sight, and looking for solutions, we're always happy to help with that.
Wonderful, wonderful. Let's shift gears here. Private networks or private cellular networks are becoming more and more interesting, and I would say perhaps even popular in the enterprise for a whole host of reasons. A lot of these networks are really meant to fill the connectivity gap that just cannot cost effectively be solved through Wi-Fi. So think outdoors, maybe even think indoors like big distribution centers and such. And in those situations, you have AGVs, like let's say automated forklifts or unmanned forklifts or drones and such. I'm curious, are you seeing interest from clients in the world of private networks to use Halo and Elsight for connectivity of these devices or machines?
We do see it, but it may be in a little slightly different way. So even if it's only a closed network for short distance, relative short distance, okay, let's call it 1 or 2 mile radius that you are in your storage or whatever logistics area, and you need to do all of that, and you can ensure that you have coverage in every square foot of those area. So you don't need our solution because you can just get an off-the-shelf module and you'll be good to go. But when you need the more sophisticated, let's call it, or more complex places, when you sometimes need to move between the private network and the public networks, because you have in some places you have the public and you want to combine, or you have two private networks, like two private bubbles that don't have any backhaul between them, so you want to jump between one bubble to the other. Those are the places when our technology will give you the advantage of having this continuity of the mission, like I said before, continuity of the communication link without having any faults or any packet loss in between, like a complete smooth transition between one bubble to the other, or between the private and the public. We have a lot of use cases around it, by the way, combining private and public, which is very interesting. Like you said, it become more and more popular, and it is an interesting use case.
I think so, yeah. Have you come across any private enterprise 5G customers that want to use you not just on their private network, but also satellite versus additional cell coverage, but satellite for that continuity?
We do have a combination of private, public, and satellite. Yes, those in a more challenging environment. I'll put it that way, without getting into too many details. But we do have deployments that combine different type of communication, like I said in the beginning, and some of them are a combination of private and public and satellite, and even public, private, satellite, and point-to-point communication. Again, it depends on the level of the redundancy that you want built into your system in the end of the day.
Right. Well, speaking of the future of connectivity, my friend, 5G kind of came around in the early 2019s. We're seeing mass adoption of it today in 2024. That will continue on through arguably 2030. We're already starting to see rumblings of 6G standards and 5G advanced and such. Satellite, that's not a great statement, but a lot of MNOs are now looking at locking in some satellite partnerships. We've had a few announcements here in the United States. For enterprises, I'd love to get your perspective on what's the future of connectivity in going forward. Obviously, cellular is going to play probably a more increasing role in the enterprise world, not just from public, but from private. Clearly, lots are looking at satellite, but I'd love to get your perspective on where the future of connectivity for the enterprise is going.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And I think the future is a combination of the two, satellite and cellular. So all the LEO type of deployments and what's called NTN, non-terrestrial networks, those exactly the announcement that you were mentioning of the different operator in the States that already have those contract or relationships in place, and even started to do some POCs or starting first deployments. I think that's where the future is in terms of if you have a line of sky, not in buildings, it's less, little less relevant, even though you can still have repeaters and so on. But it's definitely will change the way we're looking on communication. And I think overall, because cellular is in such a big scale, I mean, think about the number of subscribers you have on the three big networks in the US. It's like billions of users, and those can rely on those standards, the 3GPP release, different 3GPP releases. It's all very standardized. It makes it very easy for corporates, for big enterprises to adapt it and to look at it instead of the existing networks that sometimes are more expensive to deploy, and you don't need to deploy a full city or a warehouse again. You just have whether the public or the private, sorry, the private or the public infrastructure. And definitely that's where we see it. For us, again, like the statement I made in the beginning, for us, there will never be, if you have a critical mission that you must have continuity or communication throughout the mission, you will never have a single infrastructure that will be good enough. But having the ability to switch between them or to play with them or to kind of combine the two, that's where what will provide the end, I don't want to say customer, but the end user, which can be a machine, can be a person, can be whatever, the reliability that's required for different type of missions. And it will just become better and better. And there is always competition. Like you said, 5G started in 2015. I remember the days when you had 3G, just the beginning of the LTE. It was on the same time that HD Ready started, or even full HD. And then you want to push HD video over your cell phone, it's become almost impossible. And then the LTE came, and then the 5G came, and it's kind of a competition between demand for bandwidth and supply from the infrastructure level. And we will have more and more data that we'll have to push through those infrastructure, and that's become interesting because the throughputs there are getting higher and higher, and that's an interesting place to be in.
Well, certainly in the age of AI, my friend, all that
Yeah,
data is
absolutely.
out on the edge. Not all of it, but a good consideration of it is all on the
Mm-hmm.
edge, right? And
Yeah.
so processing the data at place, making sense of it in real time, and truly using AI for what's possible is going to require connectivity. And what's really exciting today versus 10 years ago, 20 years ago, you mentioned 3G, we're dating each other now. But what's really interesting today is arguably enterprises really didn't have ubiquitous access to these communication platforms. Think cellular today, right? By way of private cellular. There was always cellular there, but very expensive. Private cellular is now coming down quite a bit in price. If you think of satellite, non-terrestrial, that was very very expensive to use, and the bandwidth wasn't the best. And today we have Starlink and other services, that are actually competing with fixed wireless here on land. So yeah, so that's exciting. Connectivity is becoming truly much more ubiquitous. And for enterprises, as you've rightly pointed out in today's podcast, there's lots of options. Now, with that comes how do you ensure for the missions you have the right connectivity? And that's where I think Elsight is so well positioned to take advantage of that longer term. Yeah. Well, exciting times, my friend. I think this does a great job putting a fine point on an otherwise great conversation in today's podcast. So thank you so much. I think now is probably a good time for a wrap up and to end today's conversation with Yoav from Elsight. Thank you again, Yoav, for spending time with us. And for sharing your journey and showcasing how seamless, reliable connectivity is unlocking the future of unmanned systems and missions, especially autonomous operations. If you're listening with us today and as inspired as we are by the potential of Elsight's technology, be sure to follow their journey and stay tuned for more innovations. Here on Innovation Unplugged, we spotlight the trailblazers shaping tomorrow. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review. We learn from them quite a bit, and share this episode with anyone who's curious about the future of connectivity and automation. Until next time, thank you, and thank you. Keep innovating and stay unplugged. And Yoav, again, thanks again, my friend, for offering your time. We appreciate it.